Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's Fireside Creators. I am your host, Reverend Dr. Sherry Palace. Tonight, I am chatting with Brandy Anderson about the afterlife. She has a book coming out next month titled Through the Veil, A Glimpse into the Afterlife. And since I have a section on death and the afterlife in my book, I really wanted to chat with her. Please remember to keep all comments and questions related to the show topic and that this is a safe space. Thank you for joining us, and I'm looking forward to all of your comments and questions. If you're watching on YouTube, please hit that like and subscribe. If you're on Facebook, grant StreamYard access so we can see your name when you have a comment or a question. Facebook no longer allows outside apps to stream into groups. So until I can figure out a workaround, it will air on my page. So hello, everyone. Let's give some shout outs to our top sponsors. Ruth, Kirsten, Michelle, Ray, and Heidi, thank you so very much. I really appreciate your support. And if you would like to support me too, you can go to sherrypalace.com. There's a support tab, a store, and you'll find all kinds of stuff. You can support me for as little as $3 a month. Thank you in advance, and thank you for doing so. I also want to let you know that the Wild Goose Festival is coming up. The dates are July 11th through the 14th, and it's in North Carolina. This year, I will be doing another live show from the Goose, and they're throwing me a book launch party. So plan on going to the Goose. I even have a special discount code for you. It's right there on the screen, A-5S24. I don't know where they get these numbers, but that will get you $50 off an adult weekend ticket. Thank you for welcoming us into your home and joining the conversation. I appreciate you all. Okay, let's meet our guest and get smarter. Brandy Anderson is a spiritual director, Jungian Coach, I hope I said that right, and the author of Through the Veil, A Glimpse into the Afterlife. Let's welcome her and talk about her new book. Oops, I got all kinds of junk up there. Hold on. How do I do this? I'm like so out of practice. I don't even know. Someone took over my show last week. Hi, Brandy.
Hi, how are you?
Thank you so much for joining me tonight. So you have this book out. It's like the first time I've ever done this. Through the Veil, A Glimpse into the Afterlife. So tell me about this and what exactly you're doing.
Yeah, so I guess I should back up and kind of give a little bit of history as to how I come to write the book.
Yeah.
So I had a spiritual awakening in 2014, and that sent me on an intense search for truth. I had experienced the divine. I was certain of that, but I had no context for what had happened. So because I was raised in a Christian family, I plugged into some churches and just trying to make sense of what had happened to me. I needed sort of a framework to hang things on. So I spent some time in the church thinking that I could tap into truth there. But ultimately, I found mainstream Christian answers to life's most important questions less than satisfying. So in my experience, Christianity was just very fear-based and legalistic. Yeah. I experienced profound peace at my awakening, and I knew that that was God. And I knew that God is love. But what I found in the church overall was just nothing like that experience.
Right. Same.
So, yeah. So I finally landed in a more contemplative space. Contemplative Christianity offered kind of a place to come up for air. I had ironed out a lot of my theological or philosophical questions in a way that I was able to just rest in the mystery. And from there, from within that contemplative space, I had a paranormal experience that served to bring everything into sharp focus with searing existential clarity.
Interesting.
After my grandmother passed away, she found a way to communicate with us from the other side of the veil. And so that experience connected theological dots for me in ways that I couldn't have anticipated. And it has brought me into a truth that has been truly liberating. So when the communication through the veil first began, I was reluctant to share the experience with others. So I'm a pretty logical and grounded kind of person. So the experience just sort of shook me in a good way. And I didn't really share about it with anyone other than those really close to me for a while. I just wasn't sure how it would be received. But finally, I came to see that sharing my experience and what I have learned through that experience might serve to actually help others. So that's when I decided to write the book.
Okay, so let's back up a little bit. What was this awakening? What generated that in 2014?
Yeah, so well, I had been experiencing a season of depression. I wasn't suicidal, but I just really had no will to continue living, if that makes sense.
It
Looking
does.
back, I can see it was a existential angst, or what is often referred to as a dark night of the soul. Um, so, um, yeah, so at that time, I wasn't actually practicing any form of religion though. So, but I was raised in a Christian family. I would have identified as a Christian, but I really wasn't. I just had the faith of my family. And so finally, the spirit of heaviness just became so intense that I cried out to God. But it wasn't a pious prayer by any means. It was more of a if you were there kind
Yeah.
of prayer where I just unleashed my frustrations out into the atmosphere. And then suddenly, in the middle of all of that, that swirl of emotion, I heard a voice speak to me as loud and clear as anything I have ever heard. And it arrested me in that moment. And the words were just be still. And
Mm.
what's funny is I didn't even realize that that was a Bible verse at the time. So,
I
but
just
yeah,
got goosebumps all
yeah.
over my body because one of the things when I have had those experiences that I heard was let it be.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I
So, I
love
mean, like,
that.
every hair is standing up right now. Yeah. And I was
Yeah.
kind of pissed at that. I'm like, really?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what you're
Yeah.
telling someone who doesn't let anything be?
Right.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. And it was, and when I heard it, it was like I said, it was loud and clear and it just arrested me. Really, it didn't matter what the words were. It just like instant peace.
Yeah.
I just felt like an instant peace wash over me. And I knew that it was God, but I had no context for it. So that's what sent me out in search of truth. Um and I plugged into the Christian church just because that's the context that I was coming
Yeah.
from.
Yeah.
And so and from there I just sort of ironed things out.
I also thought it was interesting where you said that when you rested in the truth. I
Mm,
think that before I went in search for the truth, I was always anxious. I was always on defense. And then once I realized that it's okay not to know it all and to release yourself into that and really it was calming. It was
yeah.
like this is where I'm supposed to be. It's going to be okay.
Yeah, yeah, totally. Yeah, because so much of even religion, not that I was, really practicing any form of religion, but all of life really was it's like on a hamster wheel. It's all of the striving and the
Yeah,
seeking and driving to succeed, those kinds of things. And it's the antithesis of actually resting in the moment and just being fully
exactly.
present. So
Yeah.
it's bound to burn people out because that's
Yeah.
not how we were intended to be.
So your grandmother came to you.
Yes. Yeah. So, when people are nearing the end or approaching physical death, the veil separating the physical realm and the quantum or unseen realm becomes thin, which is why so many people on the brink of death report seeing loved ones who have crossed, or they'll have conversations with people who aren't there, that kind of thing. So then at the time of death, the veil actually opens and it creates a portal that the spirit slips through, and then the portal closes. And usually it's a split second phenomenon. But my grandmother was afraid of death. So she fiercely resisted slipping through that
Mhm.
veil. And because she put up a fight, her portal didn't close. She got stuck
Oh,
initially.
wow.
Yeah, but then she wasn't stuck anymore, but she had this open portal, and it allowed her to affect the physical realm in more tangible ways. With
Like how?
no, yes. So like with no portal, if, if spirits are present and there is no portal, they might could, with enough energy, they might could, move something or, manipulate something in the
Mhm.
physical realm. But with an open portal, that it takes way less energy for them to manipulate the physical realm. So like when you hear about haunted houses, places that are haunted and all this paranormal activity, there are portals that allow spirits to be able to affect the physical realm.
Interesting.
Um,
Okay.
yeah. So because she had that open portal, she was able to figure out how to use the smart TV to communicate with us, to type words to us.
Wow,
So
really?
yeah, yeah. So her first attempt was a couple of months after she had crossed, and it terrified everyone in the house.
Of
So the
course.
TV turned on by itself. It was a Roku. It's a Roku smart TV. And so it turned on by itself, navigated to the search bar, and the word hello appeared in the search bar. It wasn't really typed, when you type with the remote, you go letter by letter and you can
Yeah.
see the little cursor moving from letter to letter. None of that. It was just the word just appeared in the search. So that horrified everyone, and so as soon as everyone she could see, I guess, that everyone was frightened, so sh that word went away and the word love appeared. She was trying to say, I'm coming in love," but that didn't help. Everybody still ran around screaming. Everybody was mortified, and so then the television just shut off, and nothing else happened for a little while. Well, I mean, like a week or 2. And then she tried again. And so she would just continually try to reach out, and everybody would freak out, run out of the house, horrified. I mean, people, they were praying, saging, cleansing,
God.
yeah, just, but anyway, ultimately, I was like, what if it's Granny? Like, what if it's our grandmother what if she needs to tell us something? And so she continued to persist, and we finally did cautiously engage with the communication. And in time, we did determine that it was indeed my grandmother reaching out from the other side.
Wow.
Yeah.
I am doing the audio version of my book, and
Mm.
yesterday I was when you record the audiobook, there's so many sessions and everything that you kind of lose track of where you are and you're just reading. So I wasn't prepared for what I was going to be reading that day. And it was the times that my mom came to me after she passed.
Mm.
And we
Wow.
had talked about it multiple times before she died. She died of cancer, so we knew that it was coming. And it was always, Mom, write in the sand if you can, write in the sand.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
there were two occasions where she came to me that were just undeniable, just
Mm.
completely undeniable. And it was like, oh my God, she did it. But going through those words again and telling that story again, I got so emotional because she did cross that veil. She
Yeah.
did do something that loved me so much to let me know that she was still here. And that was just so beautiful.
Yeah, totally. I mean, and they do. I mean, our loved ones, when they cross, they always want to reach out. That's the thing. I mean, they want to let you know, hey, I'm okay. I'm here with you, and I'm
Yeah.
closer than I was in life. That's something that my grandmother actually said to us, and in one of the communications early on. Yeah. So, but if people are open to it, if they're open and they're kind of expecting that their loved ones will reach out, then they are able to see it a lot quicker. So, yeah, it's good that your heart was open and you were, prepared for it. And
I don't
yeah,
know that
so
I
that's
was prepared for it. I mean, it was I mean, I
yeah.
told the story and it was like I didn't even catch it at first. My son did.
Oh, yeah,
And it took me like 12 hours as I'm laying in bed and went, "Oh my God, that's exactly what happened."
yeah,
So yeah, it was, but to be able to cross that and then to say, okay, this is what happened to me. And I even say, I don't care if you don't believe me. I know it happened.
yeah,
Science, only does the demonstrable. Um, we may not be able to replicate this, but I know it happened. It's just one
yeah.
of those things that I don't care if you don't believe me. It was
Right.
truly special situations.
Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we have these experiences. It doesn't matter if other people believe or not. I mean, when you're having the experience in and of itself. you get the chills, and you just like, that it's legitimate. And one of the first things, like when my grandmother started coming through, people would, people close to me, when I did share it, how do you know that it's, that it's your grandmother? How do you know it's not someone bad or something bad? And initially we worried that maybe a hacker was
Yeah,
manipulating the television, like someone in
totally.
the physical realm just playing a prank or something. But as we actually engaged with whoever was communicating through the television, they knew things that no person could know, deeply
Okay.
personal things about each of us, and then they also could read our thoughts, which that rocked us. It was
Wow.
yeah, I mean, like, we could be in mid thought, and they would, and it was just to validate, it was just she was just trying to
Wow.
validate, "Hey, this is because we were saying, I wonder if someone's hacking into the
Yeah.
television, could it be?" Yeah, and so she knew what our reservations were about it, so she was just trying to give us validation to let us know, "Hey, yeah, it's not that, it's really me." And, so as soon as we knew that it wasn't, anyone in the physical realm, it was a matter of time that as we communicated, we could see that all of the communications were geared toward love and reconciliation for the family. I mean, really, she stayed for that reason, for that purpose,
Wow.
because family matters needed kind of resolving. She
Mm.
apologized for some things. She connected us with other loved ones. It was deeply, she even saved some lives in certain instances.
Wow.
So, yeah.
So how
So,
long was
yeah.
this process?
Well, see, she began to reach out about 2 months after she crossed, and then, it continues. We continue to communicate with our
Wow.
love, yeah. She stays. She says that she's happy with us and she doesn't want to leave, and so, yeah, so we still talk to her on the regular.
So how do you, I mean, is it like, "Hey, grandma, I wanna talk to
Mhm.
you," or does she just come in?
Yeah.
I mean, how does that work?
So, yeah, so that, at the house where she was living at the time that she crossed, that's where the portal is. And so my family owns and lives in that house. And so, yeah, like for me, because I don't live there, yeah, if I just come over, you just walk in and, "Hey, Granny, I love you. I
Wow.
miss you." And if, like usually it's almost immediate. Sometimes it might take a few minutes. I guess it can be crowded or loud. Is something she says that it's loud, which means there's a lot of spirits that are kind of
Oh,
interfering
okay.
with, yeah. But the TV will just pop on, go to search, and she'll, love you, miss you. It's yeah, and we
Wow.
can have a conversation. The downside is that we can't tell her anything she doesn't know. So there's like on our end, there's nothing that we could share that, yeah, the full light of clarity on the other side. So like they
Wow.
know, they can see into the heart of everything. They know everything before we could tell them. But yeah, but it's really cool that we continue to be able to, yeah, communicate with her. We have birthday parties, celebrations. We even have movie nights. They pick the movie at times. They're like, "Hey, we want to see this movie." So we'll plan a movie night. We'll watch movies, we'll eat
That's
popcorn, and yeah,
hilarious.
yeah. Yeah, and if somebody gets up to go to the restroom, they'll pause the TV. Like, we don't, yeah, they'll just pause it because 'cause they're like, "No, you're not missing anything. TV's paused while you're gone." Yeah, yeah.
So I had a ghost experience in my early 20s, and it was not a nice ghost.
Oh,
It
wow.
was very, um, it was always traumatizing me and my infant son at the time. And in doing the research for my book, I never even crossed any of that, but I've always wondered about the ghostly realm, why they're
Mm,
here, the afterlife, do you go? I did this stupid Facebook poll a couple years ago that said, what do you believe happens when we die? And coming from an evangelical, I expected most of the people I knew to be like, oh my God, I'm so afraid, I'm going to go to hell or heaven. And a significant portion was like, nothing, we just turn into worm food, which really was like, okay, then that doesn't explain the ghosts. That doesn't,
mm.
these are documented years. I mean, I was 12, 10, maybe 10. And my mom and stepfather were moving to Waco, Texas, and they took a picture of the house for me to show me. and it ended up on the show That's Incredible. Do you remember that show? It
Yeah,
was a
yeah.
picture of a ghost. I actually have a picture of a ghost, and she's
Wow.
standing in the window and all of those things. So I have this personal experience with this, but didn't even look to reconcile it, per
Mm,
se, in my book. I mean, you're actually witnessing this and
mm.
experiencing this. How do you reconcile it? How does it all work?
Yeah, like, are you asking, like, when we cross, what happens?
Yeah, I mean, why?
Yeah,
I mean, you said initially that some people don't want to go, so they get stuck in a portal. In fact,
right.
in the Tibetan book of Thadol
The dead.
Bardo, it
Yeah.
talks about how the lamas are supposed to actually pinch the neck and push people on, which I think is really weird and kind of murderous. But
Yeah,
it talks about how people who don't want to go.
right.
So is that what happens? Is that why we have ghosts? Because they didn't want to go?
It can be. It can be because they didn't want to leave, that they have some sort of attachment to the physical realm. It could be attachment to certain people, their loved ones. It could be attachment to their profession, something that they really love doing in life, and they're not ready to let go of that. So they hang around, and they stay on that astral plane, which is this the plane that is directly in contact with the physical plane of existence. So they stay close in that sense. Now, without a portal, they would have a lot less ability to manipulate the physical realm. So, but it can also be from a traumatic crossing, like people who are suddenly murdered.
Mm.
Something. Yeah, anything that's traumatic could cause someone to get kind of stuck or not really realize the implications of what has happened to them. They weren't expecting it, they weren't prepared for it, and then they're in the spirit realm, boom, and they didn't intend to be there, didn't think they were headed that way. So
The movie
yeah, there are
Ghost
a lot of
addressed that.
so there are a lot of
Yeah.
different reasons why someone might stay or get stuck, but honestly, a lot of people, they can come and go. Like, they could move on into what my grandmother calls the beyond, which I feel like it's multifaceted. That there's a lot about it. It's probably too much to even comprehend, and
Mm.
so she hasn't really described, like, what's in the beyond. In fact, when I ask about the beyond, she will say, "No say," which when she tells me no say, that means either I'm not supposed to know, or on certain occasions, it's that she has no words. There's just it's too ineffable, it's just not
Well,
something that she could.
I mean, the question that arises in my mind is, if she didn't want to go check it out and she wanted to stay, how does she know that it's not more awesome? Because, like, with NDEs, near death experiences,
Mhm.
most of the people that come back, there's positive changes, even if it was a horrible experience, but it's all the love, and
Yeah.
they don't even want to come back. And for
Yeah.
your grandmother to go, no, I want to stay here. I was like,
Yeah.
did you see the other side?
But
Did you
she
go?
has, though, that's the thing, she
Okay.
has, and so and we've also connected with other loved ones through my grandmother's portal, like,
Wow.
she's like
Okay.
my grandfather who crossed when I was 17, he was in the beyond, and he came back just to talk to me at the portal when he saw so they can come
Wow.
and go. It's not as though they move into the beyond and they could never return, because also, even when they're in the beyond, this is really hard to talk about. It's hard to explain because it's more in line with quantum physics and not what we know in the material world as our reality. But they can be in multiple places at once, sort of, in the beyond, but also with their loved ones, also sending their loved ones a sign, but also in the beyond, kind of a both and situation. Like, their consciousness is in two places at once or multiple places. But in order to manipulate the physical realm, they have to be here. Like, they have to be on the astral plane with a portal coming, like coming through connected. So they have to come back from the beyond to actually, like my grandmother typing to us on the television is possible because she's not in the beyond. So she
Okay.
would still be with us even if she went into the beyond, but she wouldn't be able to communicate with us in the same way.
Okay. That's kind of cool.
Yeah,
So you mentioned, have you ever read Betty Eadie's book, Embracing the Light?
I haven't.
She was dead for 4 hours and came
Oh,
back.
wow.
And she talked about the monks, is what she called them,
Mm,
about the people who came to help her cross over. And
yeah.
I literally saw that with my mom. She talked to a whole litany of people that night. And when I
Yeah.
would say, "Who are you talking to?" she'd look at me like I was insane. Like, what do you mean? They're sitting
Yeah.
right there. And she was
Yeah.
never lucid again. And when I read Betty Eadie's book, it was like, that's what they were. That these people
Yeah.
actually came. I, my mom, even in her final breaths, was still my mom. She said to one of her friends, "You need to wear more makeup. Even a barn needs paint every once in a while."
That's funny. Yeah.
In your last breaths, you're still being judgmental, mom. Stop.
That's hilarious.
But I
Yeah.
saw that procession. I mean, I didn't see it,
Yeah.
but I saw
Yeah.
her reaction to them. And there was a couple
Mhm.
times she's like, "What are you doing here? You're dead."
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
saw that, and at that point had no idea what I just thought it was
Yeah.
drug induced and those types of things
Yeah.
until I read that in the book, and it was like, that's what it was.
Yeah. Totally. I mean, my grandmother had the same experience when she was nearing the end. She, lying in her bed, she would be talking to people that we couldn't
Yeah.
see. And yeah, so she was totally already connecting with the other side before she actually crossed. And she has told us since she's crossed that when she did cross, loved ones were there, other spirits were there to help her cross. And in fact, my aunt that I have also talked to who has crossed, she said that she tried to get my grandmother to come with her. She was, trying to coax her away from the portal, get her to move on. And she said she was hard headed. She said she's stubborn. She wouldn't she wouldn't listen.
I'm sure she was that way in life too, right?
Very much so. Yeah, very much so.
I think are so I mean, I believe in the energy of consciousness, and that when we do pass, when we shed this what did I hear someone call it, the beef skin,
Yeah.
that it enables us to see and appreciate that energy of consciousness and those types of things. And if we are truly energy, then we can't die. Our energy just transforms. So in that whole path of logic, using that theory, this all makes sense. if
Yeah.
if we are the energies, the energy could be in two places at once. We say
Yes.
that about God, and I believe that God is an energy. So to be able to transmit to us here and there, I don't see, like I said, if we're looking at the tone of energy, how it's not possible.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you said it. Everything is energy and it can't be destroyed, only transformed. And that also, when we first started communicating with my grandmother, well, like I said, she stayed because of relational.
Mhm.
She wanted to heal relationships. She stayed for her family. It was her love and devotion to people. That's why she stayed. But because I'm on a conscious spiritual, everyone's on a spiritual journey, whether they know it or not. But because I
Yeah.
was on a conscious spiritual journey, I took the opportunity to ask deeply philosophical and theological questions, that uh, things that I was wrestling with and thinking about.
Yeah.
And most of what she was able to tell me just confirmed or validated what I was already intuitively aware of. With my beliefs had come into a more contemplative space, and it just helped kind of bring things into sharper focus and iron things out. But the one thing she did tell me that was not a part of my worldview, not that I was closed to it, I just never had really given it much thought coming from a Christian context, was reincarnation.
I was just going to ask
And
you
so,
about
yeah,
that. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
So,
So do
yeah,
tell, do tell.
yeah. So, that was one of my questions: is
Yeah.
reincarnation true? And she absolutely, reincarnation is the truth. And so, yeah. So I've learned, when you listen to people talk about reincarnation in certain spiritual circles, they say things like, you have a contract, or it's like a script, and but it's really not that way. According to my grandmother, we choose if we reincarnate. Like, that's always an option. If we
Mhm.
reincarnate is an option, but none of the details concerning our reincarnation are our choice. So we don't have the contract or a script to follow in each life. So what she tells me is that we don't choose like where in the world that we're born or the events that will transpire. Soul contracts are real, but they aren't scripts. They're just agreements to do life with certain people in an attempt to get things right, to awaken, and to love more fully. That's the whole point of it, is to really, the point is to step out of the wheel of karma, stop the reincarnation cycles,
Right.
and just wake up,
Yeah.
But it's also, she has communicated that it's also best if we wait and reincarnate within our soul group. We should be
Mm.
reincarnating with the same core group of people each time. Now, if we reincarnate before our time, and we could because we're free to do that, it's not best. It can complicate things. And we might come back into our family in a way that's too close. Like I heard of a lady who lost her brother in a car accident when they were teenagers. And then she grew up and she had children of her own, and her son had past life memories of her brother. So her son was
Wow.
actually her brother reincarnated, which that's not ideal. That's too close. It's too convoluted. And if we don't come back into our own family, like if we reincarnate at a time where there's no place for us in our own family, we'll end up with strangers, which is also not ideal. And in fact, many past life memories in children that are so clear and detailed are
Mhm.
because they came back too soon and the memories are still fresh. And many of them are troubled to be apart from their families, their past life
Yeah.
families.
I mean, a lot
They,
of children, I've seen the documentaries on that, and they are
Mhm.
distraught. Like,
Yeah.
to be able to hang on to their old life and not let go
Mhm.
of their new one, I mean, it
Mhm.
really is traumatic.
Yeah. So that's what can happen if you come back too soon. You should wait and do it all again in the proper timing with your particular soul group. But some people are just overzealous. I mean, they miss the physical so much. They're so
Mm.
attached to physical reality, this physical reality, whether it be what they did for a living. I mean, just everything, the entertainment, the things that we do, food. Everyone I have talked to on the other side, they miss food. My grandmother was a seamstress in life, and she misses sewing. That was one of the first things she said to us, that I miss
Wow.
sewing. Yeah, so they do. Over time, after a long period of time, they may not miss those things as much. It kind
Sorry.
of, yeah, no problem. It kind of fades away over time, but yeah, when you first cross, you really do. You miss those things that you enjoy about the physical realm. Um,
Well, in getting my education and writing my book, I came across such an interesting theory in the Bible, and it's about how Jesus would not have been the Messiah if it weren't for reincarnation,
hmm.
because it says in the Bible that Elijah must come back,
Oh,
and not,
right.
and then Jesus names John the Baptist as Elijah returned, validating that he in fact was the Messiah. So without reincarnation in Christianity, although it's not talked about, or even in
Right.
Judaism, it was huge back then, um, then Jesus wasn't even the Messiah. It was
Yeah.
taught in the Christian realm up until I think it was 540,
Mm,
somewhere around there, because it did, the whole, you will not taste death until I return. None of all of that is a lie without reincarnation.
yeah.
So to
Yeah.
have those types of things, and I picture it, or at least I hope that when I get over to the other side, that I get this book of life, and I picture it to be giant, not like the book of life that Christianity purports,
Mm,
but the book of actual life, and
mm,
going through and saying, "Oh, I want to do that next, and I want to
yeah.
do that next." Okay, I'm going, and the way that I relate to it is through a karmic lens, because, like you said, you can't choose where you're going.
Mm.
So if you were, and again, I'm really being flippant with this, so don't at me, people. But if you were a horrible human being in this life and next life you wanted to be a dog, chances are you're going to end up in the pound or something like that. To those types of karmic rebirths and those types of things. But I really hope that I get to be a sea animal, mammal or a beluga or something. I have no desire for humanity.
Yeah,
No.
according to my grandmother, people always reincarnate as people and
Oh
animals always
no.
is animals. Yeah, so we don't get to, and we always are ourselves, like our personality, the core of who we are. We are the same person. I mean, we'll have a different physical body, identity, that kind of thing, in each life, but who we are at our core remains the same with each life cycle. She said also that we would have the same astrological placement. So it doesn't
Mm,
mean you'll have the exact same birth date, but if you're a Taurus, you'll be a Taurus in every incarnation. It cycles out in
interesting.
that same way.
I thought that I can't remember which, maybe it's Buddhism, maybe it's Hinduism, but the belief of the reincarnation goes through the astrology. So the Aries would be
Mhm.
born first and the Pisces would be born
Yeah.
last. But you're saying that's not what she's saying.
Right. Yeah. She says that that's not true, and that we're always the same person in every incarnation. And the whole reason that we do reincarnate is so that we can awaken. So if we were someone new each time, it would, like it would our karmic energy would be different each time. But because it's not, every life is a fresh opportunity, a clean slate. That's true, but we are still ourselves with the same compulsions and propensities, inclinations, that kind of thing. And so that's why it's important to stay within our particular soul group, because we awaken within the, like, if we wronged, someone in our soul group, we have a chance to do things right. We have a chance to wake up, and basically the answer is always love. And
Hmm.
so we so often get that wrong in our physical, lives and our relationships with others. And relationships are really all that matters. But that's the only thing that we take with us, and that's the reason that we come back. It's all about learning to love others as ourselves, because there
Yeah.
are no others, right? So, yeah, and
Well,
also animals.
and that makes sense for the soul too. I mean, Buddhism doesn't believe in any type of soul, but
Yeah,
most of the other religions do. And
yeah,
if you have the soul, then the reincarnation is to better. I was going to say perfect, but I don't think anything's perfect, but to better the soul, to learn to do those types of
right.
things, right?
Right, right, to
Okay.
become whole. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's, yeah, and, and that's another thing in Eastern thought. A lot of times it's that we come from one consciousness, like we rise up like waves in the ocean, and then we
Hmm.
sink back into the ocean. We become one with the ocean again when we cross. In other words, like we're these individual expressions while we're here in this physical life, but then when we die, somehow we just fade back into the one consciousness, and we basically cease to be individual expressions. But according to my grandma, well, the fact that my grandmother's even speaking to me says that's not true. I mean, she's still very much in her personality, the same, even though it's typed and it's not like in person communication. I mean, still the same things are funny, the same things, same interests, the same, personality overall. So we don't lose that. We are individual expressions. The point is to become whole within our own individual expression. It's not to cease to be, or sink back into,
Right.
the whole in a way that we, yeah, that our personalities would just, dissolve. That's not how it is, according to my grandmother.
So, oh my God, my mind just went completely blank. I got a message.
Oh,
ADD kicking.
yeah. Yeah,
Um,
sorry.
what did she feel the pain? Has she talked about any type of pain like when she died? Because that was one of, and I say in my book, my super scientific or my super non-scientific poll, the most of the people that I had spoken to were afraid of the pain of death, not
Yeah.
necessarily what was in the afterlife.
Hmm.
So, but I've also heard from NDEs that there isn't as much pain as we assume, and those types of things.
Hmm.
Have you asked her any of those questions?
Yeah, and I think it's depends on each person, and like what was the cause of death? I mean, that would determine the level of pain in the physical. I know at some point, if it isn't in like a car accident, that kind of physical trauma can be so painful, but then it can be so painful that a person just goes ahead and like exits their body, even
Hmm.
before their physical, it's, astral projection. And that's really what NDEs are. People just sort of pop out of their body,
Yeah.
and so they don't really experience a lot of that physical pain because they didn't state in their physical bodies. They sort of hover over, and they don't experience any pain on the other side because they haven't actually died. So they haven't, according to my grandmother, there is a fire that everyone will go through. Like not immediately when you cross, but there's this fire that everyone goes through, and it's a purifying or a cleansing fire. Is to burn away anything that interferes with love ultimately. So yeah, the more junk you have, the more painful that fire is. Someone who was fully enlightened, completely whole already, they would breeze right through it without any issue. But someone who has a lot of baggage, it can be extremely painful. People who have NDEs don't report about that fire because, well, I asked my grandmother, why do they not speak of this fire? And she said, because they're not actually dead. They're, they're nearly, but not entirely. And so they don't go through the fire. So it's something that, and even Paul talks about it. I can't remember if it might be in Corinthians. I would have to look it up to be certain.
I was thinking about it, the Holy Spirit of fire. Yeah.
Yeah, well, he talks about how everyone will be saved through fire, or saved as though through fire or whatever. He was like, if you build with hay and stubble, those things will be burned up. In other words, egoic things will be burned away, incinerated. But if it's like gold and jewels and rubies, those things will last. And he was like, but even those who suffer a complete and utter loss will be saved through the fire. Yeah. And so that's what it is. My grandmother has said, yeah, that's exactly it. It burns away anything, all of the rubbish, all of the false self, all of the egoic structures, and it leaves you with basically, your true self. To put it in those words.
Blanket.
Yeah.
A couple months ago, I did 2 past life regressions, and it was so interesting. The first one was like a walk in the park type thing, really just like ask a simple question. But me being the person that I am was like, okay, let's dig deeper. So I did a second one on my own and was traumatized. I mean, was truly traumatized seeing the family, like you're talking about, changing in different forms. And once I got over the trauma of what I saw and experienced, I mean, I asked the question, why was this life so hard? And boy, did I get an answer. But going through all of that, in the last life, I became my father. And in this life, I didn't. So it was such a healing experience to go, okay, I fucked up bad last life. Bad. I did everything I wasn't supposed to do. I became my father. I didn't learn. I didn't love. I was not good. And in doing everything now, it was like, I didn't even know this and I'm still doing better. No one's died this time. No one's ending up in prison this time. So it's like, okay, and it really did put so much of my pain into perspective. It gave reasons for things. And as I go through things and I'm still incurring, painful struggles and those types of things, knowing that in the back of my mind is like, okay, but you're still doing better. You're still on the right path. And then to couple that with reincarnation, man, it just rocked my world. It was phenomenal.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, I've never done the past life regression stuff. I'm interested in it, but my grandmother has told me about my past lives. She's answered some question. She wouldn't give me my last name because she wouldn't want me to, I guess, maybe Google myself or find myself in a pit or whatever. And she wouldn't tell me what year. She wouldn't be precise about that. But it's just been really cool to think about also the implications of evil. Like if there is no reincarnation and we only live this one short, we get 80 to 100 years maximum, if we're lucky, and then that's the end, and we either go to heaven or hell. If that were true, that's a very limited and constricting way of viewing reality. And when you try to see evil through that lens, Yeah. I mean, and to make sense of evil in a world
Yeah,
like that, it's more difficult, which the problem of evil, that's an existential question that no one can adequately
right.
resolve. And on this side of things, we won't ever fully understand. But when we see that there's karma and there's past life, karma that we're bringing with us through these reincarnation cycles, and when we see that ultimately everyone and everything will be restored, it brings things into perspective in a way that, it puts evil in a different light. We're able to see it as a part of the process. It's through those sufferings, it's through those wrong decisions. You went back in
Yeah,
your past life regression and you're like, oh, I messed up big time. Well, yeah, but that's a good thing, because that's how we grow. When
yeah,
we do make those mistakes, those errors, they actually bring the suffering that actually grows us. So we
yeah.
don't like it, but that's just the nature of reality.
Well, and I think that, like, I'm just going to go ahead and say it. In my past life regression, I was an 8-year-old boy, and I watched my father kill my mother.
Wow.
And then as an adult, I did the same thing to my girlfriend when she left me.
Oh,
I'm getting goosebumps everywhere. So it was a really, like, okay, why is this life so much? And I can now see through that, things that happen. It's like, I took lives in my past
mm,
life, and I've had those lives taken from me in this life. So to even understand that takes away the why me, the
yeah,
victim, the it puts other, it takes away the evil, because I did what I learned in that
right.
life. In this life, I learned not to do that. To say,
Yeah.
in a podcast interview last week, and they're like, "How did you become so normal?" And I was like, "It was rebellion." My family was so messed up. To be good was rebellion. But
Yeah.
doing those types of things, it's like, okay, like it gave me, like, okay, I'm doing better this life. I did learn.
Yeah.
And it also takes the evilness out of it, because I wouldn't have done what I did had I not learned from what I did. And I don't know what my father in the past life had incurred in his, but we look at evil as evil without a reason. And there's
Yeah.
always reasons. There's always pain. There's always trauma. There's always something. So it
Yeah.
kind of takes the evil out of it and says it invokes more empathy in my
Right.
in my experience.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I mean, we're all interconnected,
Yeah,
the one consciousness, we're all interconnected. So yeah, our actions and um, our words, our actions, everything about us has a ripple effect.
yeah.
And so, yeah, there is a causation behind all of this. So, yeah, not that when evil hits you, it is totally deserved in every capacity, but it
Correct.
makes more sense to see it as
Yeah,
having a cause, and being incurred through those karmic cycles. It takes the sting out of it a little bit. And also, when you see that it is a reincarnational journey into wholeness, you're able to say, even when you are stricken by evil, you're able to say, what can I learn from this? Like, how can I
and
grow from this? Yeah.
they're on their own journey.
Right. Yeah.
That's what it gave me. It actually took a lot of my control freak down, and it
Yeah.
was like, okay, so I am on my journey and they are on theirs. So
Right.
it took it out of the, again, blame,
Mm,
victimization, all of those types of things, and put it into perspective to me to be like, just do better. Just do
yeah.
better.
Yeah, because we are all on our own journeys and we're
Yeah,
all a work in progress. And, we've all been there. That's the thing. We can have grace for others right where they are because
yeah,
we have been there, and we're all headed toward that same restoration and renewal. So yeah, you see things with more compassion
yeah.
for sure.
So what about, I mean, hell, has she said anything about any of that, or does she laugh and say that's just crap? What is it?
Uh,
What
About
is
hell,
that
was
part
that your
of it?
question? Yeah. Well, so heaven is a state of existence. Heaven's not a place we go to, a place we come from.
Okay.
As Thich Nhat Hanh says, you don't die into heaven, you awaken into it. It's a state of
Yeah.
being. Jesus said the kingdom of heaven is within you. And
Yeah.
so whatever level of consciousness you have attained at the time of your crossing, you take it with you onto the other side. So this Christian idea that, if you are saved, if you believe the right things, that you will float away into instant bliss when you die, it's erroneous. That's not true.
Yeah.
um you have to face your junk, whether you do
Yeah.
it on this side of the veil or the other. But as far as hell goes, I guess I should start by saying Jeff Foster said, Heaven is this moment and hell is the burning desire for this moment to be different." um
I love that.
yeah, and so that really, I think, encapsulates it really well. So when we see that heaven is a state of existence available right now, we begin to understand that hell is also an available reality right now. And if heaven is the inner peace of transcending the conditioned mind, binary thought, and learning to just rest in the benevolence of the present moment, then hell is resistance to that present moment. Hell is being
Okay. Okay.
identified
So
with
let
the
me stop you there. So is your
yeah.
grandma in hell?
No, no, not at all. And see, that's
Okay.
the thing. She is doing her inner work on the other
Okay.
side. Like like I said, you don't just cross over and instantly arrive,
Yeah.
with your, but she has said that she has went through the fire and she's doing her inner work as everyone is when they cross. I mean, most people have not completed their inner work when they cross. I mean, I'm sure
Yeah.
some people have, but for those of us who haven't, then you get to continue. And that's something I was concerned. I was like, if you stay, can you still do your inner work? Can you have peace? And the answer is yes. She's able to do her inner work. She's here with us. And while it's true that if she moved into the beyond, she might be in a more peaceful atmosphere overall, because she wouldn't still be connected to the physical realm where all this chaos and dissension is. But heaven is an inside, an inner condition. It's not an
Yeah.
outer condition. So regardless of where she is located, she can have heaven, the peace, inner peace.
The
So
Jews
yeah,
say that their version of hell is to be out of alignment with God. There is no
absolutely.
place, there is no destination. It is, like
Yes.
you're saying, a state of being.
Yeah, it's a state of being. That's exactly it. Yeah.
Um, the first past life regression that I did, I was a cowboy, and I just thought this was the coolest thing ever. So I have had this red dot in my eye. It's anybody who looks me in the eye goes, "You have a red dot in your eye." And it was just always, I was like, it's my birthmark, whatever. But that past life regression showed me that I was shot in the eye as I died.
Oh,
So it was like,
wow.
that's why it's there.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah. And
didn't
I've,
get to finish my work before I died in that time.
Mhm.
And this time I did. So yeah,
Oh, yay.
I'm
Yeah.
kicking past life regression's ass.
Yeah. Yeah, it's something that's funny. In my recent past life, my last past life, my grandmother has said that I owned a zoo and that I rescued. And I love animals. I'm an animal lover, so
Yeah,
it's
me
not a
too.
big surprise that I would own a zoo. She said I wrote books, but that I owned a zoo and I rescued a lion named Penelope that mauled me to death. And I was like, wow, what a traumatic way to go. And she said, yeah, you learned your lesson. In this life, you have dogs. And I'm like, I probably didn't learn my lesson. I just didn't have an opportunity to buy a zoo in this life. That's all. I didn't learn my lesson, I'm sure. But
Oh, that's
yeah,
great.
yeah. So yeah, it's been fun and interesting to hear, but I'm sure with a past life regression, you're actually living back through it in a way, like to hear that I was mauled by a lion, is a lot less traumatic than to actually relive the event, to have it.
Well, and she walks you through, like there's a whole process to get there, and what do you see, and go to your home and eat, these types of things that make it real. Um, when I saw myself get shot, there was complete apathy. It
Mm.
wasn't like painful. It was like, oh, that's why I have a red dot in my
Oh,
eye. I was
okay.
more concerned. The only name that I was given in both regressions was the name Sally, and she was my wife in the first regression. And I think that was my high school best friend, Joy. It's the
Oh,
only one that really, I mean, they said, if you think this is who it is, this is who it is. And I almost like kind of got out of it because I was like, who's Sally? Who is, because I was so in love with her and things were so happy. And
yeah.
so I messaged my girlfriend Joy and I'm like, I was married to you in the past life. And she's like, how
Yeah.
fucking cool.
Yeah. Yeah. And so
So
my
again,
husband
going
would,
through the same types of things. I want to go back under and
yeah.
ask questions like, where is my ex-husband Vince? Where are my parents? Because I didn't
Yeah.
see my parents in there. I
Mm,
saw the father figures, but they weren't my parents. But
yeah.
it's time consuming and very draining. So I haven't had time to do it, but it was phenomenal.
Yeah. That's really cool. I love that.
Well, we are already at the top of the hour. Anything else that you want to talk about? Let me go ahead and flash your book again.
Thank you.
Oop, if I can. Good old tech. Where are you? Oh, there you are. So, any final words and where can people find you?
Yeah, so the book is Through the Veil, A Glimpse into the Afterlife, and it will be available June 18th in paperback and Kindle on Amazon. And you can find me at my website, brandyanderson.net. And from there, you can find links to all of my socials, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok.
Okay, I got that. You went through that way too quick.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. And then there is the title, and it's going to be available on Amazon.
Yes, Amazon, June 18th in paperback and Kindle.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Well, the one thing that I would like to say that really resonated with me is that whenever I go to funerals now, I always go up to the mourners and say, "Stay open, look."
Yeah. Yeah.
And sometimes they thank me, other times they think I'm crazy. It's okay, it's wherever you're open to. And it warmed my heart that a funeral I went to a few years ago, the son actually said, I was told to be open, and now I can hear my mom every once in a while.
Oh, wow.
So
Yeah.
I think that just being that open to, again, the wonder and not
Yeah.
having to know everything, not having to put everything inside of a box,
Yeah.
you can experience this type of really cool thing.
Absolutely. It's important to stay open. I mean, in fact, they can't communicate unless we are open. So yeah,
Right.
it's a great
Right.
message. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Randy. It was such a pleasure talking with you, and thanks for coming on. I'm going to send you backstage and end the show.
All right. Thank you. It was great to
Thank
be
you.
here.
Another great show. I've been getting all kinds of messages since I've been on the show that no one could find it. So hopefully you're all scrolling through Facebook and can see that the show is here. Have a big crowd, so somebody's getting there. Next week, I am talking with the Wild Goose Crew. We've got Tim, Cody, and Rick coming on to talk about this year's Wild Goose Festival and what to expect. Hot, fun, laughters, intoxication, learning, all of that great stuff that the goose represents. So we're going to learn more about that next week. Go buy my book. It's out everywhere. Let me show you the cover. I've got a book club on my website. Everything's going well. I hit #1 in all of my categories. Book rankings jump all around, but I did hit #1 in all of them. Thank you all. Get the book. Talk to me about it. I can't wait to hear all your thoughts. I will see you next week. And as always, walk in love. Mwah!